Oh, okay. Next. Then the man claiming to be a former elder of Vajrangbang slowly began speaking of internal matters. Their claim was a simple one. The alliance formed by the GDS and Bajrangbang had resolved to destroy Primavera, which had become too powerful to ignore. Yes, they're too powerful now than when they were previously. It's so fucking dumb. They had worked out a plan by which they could weaken Primavera, stir up internal conflicts, split it apart, and wipe it out in a single, swift stroke. Li had proposed the strategy. This man who knew Primavera thoroughly had drawn up the plans for Primavera's destruction. The Chinese men took a sealed letter out of a bag. The plans were written in Chinese with a fountain pen, and Li's signature could be seen at the bottom. These are the written plans Li made outlining the strategy to destroy Primavera. Li wrote up plans to destroy us. After all, Li is the one who ordered us to invade City 23 by Sun Zilong, the father, former leader of the GDS. Guess so. I vaguely knew about it already. His job was to protect his countrymen in Small Rock, Chinatown. Li had explained this himself. He had aided Primavera several times before. The Primavera family was established, so it sometimes felt like Li was Primavera's ally. However, they had faintly realized that his true mission was one that had conflicted with the very existence of Primavera. Before the Caleb family era, City 23 had been in the domain of warlords, with Alfred in the north, Caleb in the south, and several other powerful families lurking about. If foreigners like the GDS tried to make a showy invasion of City 23, the Japanese Mafia would resist, and there was a danger they might unite into a larger force. For that reason, Li had chosen to encroach rather than invade. Using merchants, he steadily encroached into City 23, using the world of the day. He brought up property after property, gave support to those among his countrymen, starting up shops and gradually increasing the size of Chinatown. Once a property became part of Chinatown, it was never sold to anyone other than one of their countrymen, even if it meant the lot went unused. In other words, once it joined Chinatown, it would never again pass into the hands of someone who wasn't Chinese. And so he gradually and quietly encroached into City 23 without firing a shot. However, once Primavera showed its strength in the soy sauce war, their perception of it changed drastically. The GDS would switch from its quiet strategy of encroachment to an active strategy. That is active. Ever since Madame Rose became the leader of City 23 and ate Caleb's place, Li has been investigating it under his Sun Zilong's orders. To find out in case of emergency how Primavera could be defeated, is that it? There's always like that. They pretended they're going to shake your hand, but they're holding a knife behind their back. Wow, way to be racist. It's nothing to be surprised about. Always prepare for the worst case scenario and plan. That's your motto, or so I hear. If I had been in their position, I would probably have done the same thing. It's nothing to be surprised about. So, if the GDS has been researching our weaknesses, what did they find out? That was stupid to ask when we already know the results. True. So this day is the result of what they learned by researching our weaknesses. Though Primavera is a young power, it was clear that Madame Rose was the sole emotional support. However, if she were to be assassinated, there was danger that Primavera would defy her and grow more united. For that reason, the plan to assassinate her was always put on hold. However, in actual fact, that plan had been carried out. In other words, something had happened in Primavera to make sure it wouldn't reunite, even if it lost Madame Rose. Richard was the first one to think of what might that be. He suddenly hung his head, dabbing at his eyes and shaking. Richard? It's Stella. What does Stella have to do with all this? Richard could envision how Stella's existence had become the trigger for this incident. However, but he couldn't explain it in words. He could do nothing but moan. I don't get it. Why? What does Stella have to do with this? If they wanted to kill her, why couldn't they shoot Madame Rose alone? Why did Stella have to get shot too? In the Distribution Association matter, Stella worked as Madame Rose's representative. Yeah, come on. This is so fucking... To us, This just meant that everyone was trying to support Madame Rose in the busy time, but it seems those and other organizations thought differently. Come on. She literally had just gotten there. According to the rumor, hardliner bosses had criticized Madame Rose for giving up too much to the GDS in the soy sauce war. That was the atmosphere when the rumor about Rose fainting from fatigue popped up. On top of that, the vital post of Primavera's representative and Distribution Association negotiations had been left to Stella. In the top ranks of Primavera, this was thought of as a beautiful story. They regretted relying on Rose alone all the time, and everyone swore to support her as best they could together. Stella quit as a lady of the evening and started helping with Rose's work in full, and this became a chance for Primavera to grow even more united. However, powers outside of Primavera had taken this in a different way. Madame Rose's attractive force had decreased towards the bosses who were unsatisfied with their naive decisions during the soy sauce war. Primavera's top ranks, worried that Primavera might split apart at the seams, had planned for a quiet regime change. Though her attractive force had decreased within the organization, her outward charisma remained unchanged. At that point, Primavera made up a story about Rose fainting from fatigue and set up Stella Mayugi in her place. It was an attempt to let her build up real-world achievements in preparations for the time when she would inherit the position of Madame. In other words, they took this as to be a quiet coup d'etat in which Richard Mayugi seized actual power. How's that supposed to mean? That's insane. Now that you mention it, it did sort of look like the Mayugi siblings stole real power away from Rose. But even so, the Primavera execs probably wouldn't all accept the Mayugis at once. In other words, if a problem came up, Primavera would split it into a Madame Rose faction and a Mayugi faction. I am responsible for this. How's that work? Why would it be your fault, Richard? It's because of my lack of virtue. That is why my sister's efforts were mistakenly thought of as a power grab by me. You're overthinking it. Stella helped Rose when she swamped with work. She was swamped with work. They just misunderstood and assumed that she meant she was Primavera's number 2. That's all there is to it. Then why did I let her help? I knew so very well how dangerous this world is. So why did I let my sister get involved? Why? We told them what was going on. Lee himself heard about Rose and Stella and accepted it, didn't he? After you saying he was thinking something completely different on the inside, are you saying? Why? I don't understand. With Rose and Stella gone, Richard would have to control Primavera alone. When that happened, Rose's devotees would split into groups depending on whether they acknowledged Richard as their successor or not. As opposed to who? In order to protect Rose's charisma, Richard had taken the lead in handling all dirty matters dealing with money. He'd also used his position as a moneylender to avoid being taken lightly, playing the part of a high-pressure, typical money grabber when working outside the family. It was a fact that this behavior of his had turned against them, inviting misconceptions. He was just a parasite after money, with no interest in Rose's ideals. Surely Richard would trick Rose someday and take over the organization. It was true that many people had that misconception. It wasn't like that. Richard respected Rose from the bottom of his heart, and Rose had been deeply grateful to have Richard there, taking on dirty jobs in her place. However, that was something only the pair of them knew. The world at large, no, even most of the bosses didn't believe that Richard truly respected Rose. I mean, I didn't really get that feeling from him. TBH. So, I include myself in some of those bosses. I actually really didn't think he cared that too much about her. I felt like if there was if she wasn't popular, he would have moved to remove her. After that, the Chinese men showed one letter or memo after another, detailing the conversations between Zilong and Ma, leader of the Bajian. Though they could all be considered circumstantial evidence, none of them rose to the level of absolute proof. There's literally no absolute proof. However, Richard and Keith were already certain that the GDS was behind this. Even Cyrus, the calmest of the lot, was 99% sure in his heart that the GDS was responsible, though he declined to make that conclusion. All the documents suggested GDS involvements were forgeries. No fucking shit. Like, they just magically got all these letters. Like, oh god, guys, look at all these letters we happen to get. Like, come on. The former elder, kicked out of the Bajrangbang, was bribed by Gabriel and easily promised to lend his help. As a man with a grudge against Ma, their current leader, he also hated Sun Zilong and the GDS, Ma's ally. Even if the enemy of my enemy isn't my friend, the enemy of my enemy is my enemy. He was a former elder of Bajrangbang, so he had detailed knowledge of internal matters, even after another Chinese member of the Bajrangbang would probably have been fooled by his forgeries. So to Richard, who was Japanese and also wanted to avenge his sister. Then Gabriel spoke of the mercilessness and cruelty of the Chinese mafia that killed his sister. He also pointed out the miraculous coincidence that not only were they both men who had lost sisters, but men who lost sisters to the Chinese mafia. By now, Richard was completely won over by the impression, and Gabriel was the same as him. Butler was now beyond the point of sighing or breaking out laughing. He was starting to recognize this emotion as terror. With this, it's clear who killed Stella. Lee, Sun Zilong. There's no way I'll let all the burden Stella bore go to waste. Oh, it's okay, I'm not blinded anymore. As long as I get to pull the trigger, I'll sit tight until the time comes. Got it. I'll make sure we leave the trigger to you. But make sure you don't go run off while we're still getting everything arranged, got it? And you're absolutely sure that you'll get everything arranged? If you strike up some weird bargain or say you'll let bygones be bygone, that's when I'll leave Primavera and do as I please. Fuck off. Don't be so full of yourself. Don't estimate us, boy. Richard, you're good, right? If even you get emotional, we're done for. I am calm. During the Soy Sauce War, Rose taught us how to follow the rules of the country's criminal underworld and protect our countrymen. I intend to do nothing more. You mean all that about spring vegetables making themselves bitter? They took a bite of a fruit that must be touched. We cannot protect the lifestyles of our countrymen unless we force them to pay a fitting price. His tone was calm, but Richard was already completely determined to have his revenge against the GDS. Duh. Cyrus was also 99% sure the GDS did it, but he figured they'd be done for if they lost their cool now. They are done for it. However, they're all sitting in the palm of Gabriel's hand now. Gabriel had predicted all these developments. So in response to a look from Gabriel, Butler said a line he had prepped with earlier. Well, to be fair, even I think it's a bit early to go accepting this blindly. After all, we know how these things go. It could be this former elder just made it all up to get back at the people who chased him out. True. Given the state of things, 99% is not enough. That's right, I'd like proof that the letters those geezers brought were real. And when you decide they are, you'll definitely issue a proclamation of war, right, Grand Boss? Of course, if these are real, there's no need to show them mercy. So, how will you prove the authenticity of these letters? Well, as to that... Even the Chinese men were at a loss to how to prove the documents could be proven. I mean, you gotta go to the source, right? I mean, that's actually what you do here, unironically. Like, they might lie to your face, but it's important to go to these and just say, hey, yo, this letter, what is it? Get the origin of it, see what they have to say to it. How do they react to it? Like, if you start pulling out letter after letter, do they get, like, really nervous? I'm like, oh my god, do they really get this? Stuff like that. That wasn't a problem. If the ones presenting the letters offered proof, it would still look suspicious to a degree. But as someone who was supposedly a third party offered proof, oh my god. In that case, we'll investigate it on our end. Oh, what a brilliant plan. Perhaps we could have we have the famed information department of our military investigation investigate these letters. So, we're getting the great and mighty U.S. military information department to research it for us now. Ain't that nice? After all, rumor has it that they even broke the code and knew about Pearl Harbor before it happened. Sure. How are you gonna prove it's real? We have several documents at HQ that are written by Lee directly. We could perform a handwriting analysis using those. Oh, God. Of course, we already have Lee's fingerprints. We'll check against those too. Well, look at these fingerprints. See those fingerprints right there? Yep. I know you can't see them personally, but yep, we're telling you, they're definitely there. I think it's just way easier to go and confront them on your own. Just start putting them to the fire and get them a reaction. Event preparation so that we can hand these over to the information department whenever we want. That's Phil for you. Always so clever. Thank you very much. Richard, and you, Keith. I don't want you to get the wrong idea, but I've also been fully convinced the GDS was responsible. However, if a war's going to break out, we need a plan. And unless we prove to third parties that we've got a right to take our revenge, it's going to get messy later. Third parties, who cares about them? All that matters is me, my gun, the trigger, and Sun Zilong and Lee's skulls. What else can matter? Major Kaburaya, Captain Butler. I ask they conduct a careful, precise investigation into whether this evidence is legitimate or not. Thank God the U.S. military has never forged any evidence for anything to get involved with the war. Thank God there's never a lie. Of course. This is an investigation, also trial. A trial to see whether or not the heavens will allow for the hammer of justice to be swung down. I'm truly grateful for your assistance. I imagine a proper revenge will be carried out by our hands eventually. However, I want to promise you that it will be done in a manner that does not tarnish the reputation of the City 23's occupying forces. Thank you for showing concern for my position. But I believe I told you. This revenge isn't yours alone. It's for both of us who lost sisters. In fact, I'm the one who wants to show concern for you. Then Gabriel hugged Richard gently and whispered into his ear, "Yeah, God, when the time comes, contact me. I promise that no MPs or police officers will get in the way of your revenge, my friend." In the car, Richard kept perfectly silent. His relationship with Lee was long, going back to his days as a moneylender. He'd known him personally for a long time, not just on business terms. Thank God all that can just go out the window because, those dirty Chinese people. Fucking Japanese people. Got him. During the feud with Caleb, and then again during the soy sauce war against Wang, each time Lee had saved them. Imagine being like, oh yeah, of course, Lee, the master manipulator, knew from the days of a moneylender that being friends with him would pay off later about taking over C-23. Get the fuck out of here. Though he had taught himself to be fully aware that true friendships couldn't exist between races, somewhere in his heart he still wanted to believe that Lee alone was different. Fucking dumb. It's so dumb. The shock of being betrayed by Lee seemed to be hitting Richard hard. Yeah, you should go talk to him. Literally, just talking fixes this. Also not being fucking racist, but you know what? Whatever. Keith also remained silent, but in contrast to Richard's empty eyes, his were sparkling. It was only natural. He knew who had killed Stella and Alan. Alan's not fucking dead. No, I guess he's in a Chinese underground place. But why wouldn't they tell Stella? There'd been no contact from Alan since that day. From what Keith had heard, he'd been on a date with Yuki, that Yuki girl. When Stella was shot and Yuji was carried to the hospital, Keith had assumed that all this activity had gotten in the way of Alan contacting him. When he heard that Alan had never returned home after that day, he realized that Stella wasn't the only one he had to avenge. One of the attacks had occurred in a popular shopping district near Chinatown. Most likely, Alan had gotten dragged into the gunfight, targeting Yuki while enjoying his date, losing his life in the process. He went to several hospitals asking around for Alan. However, none of the hospitals were accommodating Alan. This was the era they lived in. There were apparently many corpses that still hadn't been identified. According to some sources, the occupying forces, in an attempt to tuck away the crime, had already cremated the bodies, plunging the cases into darkness. Wow, I wonder why the occupying forces are doing that. Jesus. Like, there's so many, like, weird stuff like that. And it's like, oh, wow, it's crazy how all these MPs and stuff are trying to, like, cover this and shit. So dumb. It would probably be impossible to find Alan's corpse. Alan, I'll avenge you too, no matter what. People living in peacetime might find Keith heartless for believing a friend was dead without seeing a corpse, especially when that friend was close enough to be family. Yeah, I feel like I would have just, like, given it a little bit more time. I mean, it's fucking Alan. Like, if I went through literal fucking Siberia concentration camps and war camps, I feel like a little fucking bullet's not gonna take him down. At least that's how my mind would go to. If I'm thinking of a friend, like, even if people were shot, it would never even cross my mind that, like, he could be killed by someone. I would be in complete denial. However, on the battlefield and in the prison camp, he had lost many friends without even getting a chance to tend to their wounds. Yeah, but Alan's different. Like, that's just my mentality. Like, Keith could be different, sure, but my mentality is just to deny it until it's in my face. Because he was brutally familiar with the suddenness of a human life, he accepted even his close friend's death simply and bluntly. Even if he quickly accepted that his close friend was dead, that didn't change the strength of their friendship, nor the sadness of his loss. Keith was just dried up from tears he had already shed, caused by the hole in his chest and the shock of losing Stella. Stella and Alan, the sadness of losing those two precious people, silently simmered and turned into anger. Well, Stella's wasn't silent. That's awful. The Major must have been harboring a grudge against the Chinese mafia for taking the life of his sister. Looks like it. So, when he learned the GDS was behind this, that must have opened up an old wound. Yeah, sure, totally. Most likely his attempts to aid my revenge are part of a desire to lift his own burden from his shoulders. When humans hate long enough, it makes them crazy. It's the same as lust. If you don't make certain compromises and rub it out, bad things happen. Thank you. In that case, this is an opportunity. This incident, which the Major has remembered his sister's death and become emotional, is a unique opportunity. After all, when we can't even start a feud without the permission of the occupying forces. In that case, we'll have to live up to the Major's expectations. Man, imagine, like, being so fucking dumb that you think you're playing someone when you're the one getting fucking played. God. I'll use my bullets to free everyone. Stella, Alan, Richard, and the Major. And myself as well, of course. I'm pretty frail after all. Can't keep my fist raised while carrying that anger forever. But I will at least hold myself back with reason, so that it doesn't cause trouble for Primavera. Keith, make sure your gun's always ready to use. Of course. The situation's bad, even if revenge is just. We can't avoid the feud that's gonna follow. If we get in a feud with the GDS, Bajrang Bong will naturally join in. If that happens, we'll look for backup from the Satomi Alliance. Unless they're fools, they'll gather even more allies, so we need to gather allies too. So it'll become a struggle even bigger than the soy sauce war, dragging in families across Tokyo. Hey, World War I all over again, baby. I know what you're trying to say, Cyrus. Unless we use evidence to prove that our revenge is just, we'll get stuck in a massive feud. Yeah, that's it. Even in the past, when the samurai took revenge on someone who killed one of their relatives, they needed to notify the government. Oh, is that true? Grand Boss, you know everything. Don't mock me. The underworld spanning nationalities had no moral code besides money. However, to men who prized honor in the underworld, the idea of taking revenge for lost family members must surely strike a chord. If they could use evidence to justify that their revenge was justified beforehand, they could minimize the scale of the feud. Well, yeah, because less people would feel like joining in, because it's like, damn, dude, you fucking killed that dude's sister. What the fuck did you expect was gonna happen? That kind of thing. Until the investigation of those letters is complete, we'd better off polishing your gun and waiting. In exchange, I'll offer to find you a high place where you can aim right at the top of Zunzalong and Lee's heads. Hell yeah, brother. That's our Grand Boss. I think I love you. But in exchange for that, I know I'll obey your orders. I'll do anything on my own. I won't do anything on my own. Lee, Meiju, Sun Zalong. If you think Primavera is impotent, you are gravely mistaken. and Major Gabriel Cabaraya. I'm grateful to you and the good fortunes that you brought us together. Yeah, I'm sure he's glad too. Is that okay for me to say whatever I want, right? As long as it wasn't in Japanese and didn't profane angels? Oh, yes, very well, Phil. I give you permission to say anything that fulfills those two requirements. But right now, I'm in a truly wonderful mood, yes. How could I describe it? I'd like some superb wine, superb music, and superb caviar. I'm sure you'll give it to me, Phil. Please, Phil, use that small tongue of yours to give me a chirping that will match my mood. He answered with a dramatic gesture, like an orchestra conductor, responding to a call for an encore. Butler spat out the feelings that still smoldered faintly in his heart. Those feelings that weren't at all like him. If a man like himself who had willingly stained his hands in corruption said those words, surely angels would burst out laughing and demons would sneer. However, there are no angels or demons here, so he had to speak him up himself. I can't believe you managed to call Richard your friend so easily. You're the killer! You really did a wonderful job pretending to sympathize, didn't you? I wasn't pretending. I sympathized him from the heart, didn't I? And Stella and Rose, just a few days ago, they greeted you with smiles on their face, didn't they? They did. It was quite seductive when Miss Stella desperately tried to show off her cleavage in a sexual manner. You exchanged words and chatted together. They even showed respect for you. Of course, even I've arranged for scum to part ways with life on multiple occasions. But I could only do that without worrying over it because they were scum. If I'd spoken with them, if they'd shown goodwill towards me, if they had been a woman, if they'd been women, and no matter how villainous they may be, I'd be at least hesitant and unsure, right? Anyone would, as long as they were human with red blood flowing through them. But you, insensitivity. Phil, you like farces a lot. For someone so strict about other people's farces. Well, even I am human. I want you to acknowledge that even I had some trouble remaining calm in front of Richard. After all, it was all I could do not to burst out laughing. You're right, it was a mistake for me to insult you by profaning angels. You're no angel, you're a demon. Very nice. A provocative statement that tickles the ears. Just now, I was feeling less like having the sweet salmon that praises strategies, and more like the stimulating effect of caviar. You pass, Phil. For this time alone, I give you permission to rant on as long as you like, criticizing my character. Oh, well, thanks a lot for that, sir.